Welcome back to Homeschool Together. We're finally in Egypt. It's been years and years for us to finally get here. We know our daughter's been really excited. We did Egypt, extensively when we did our around the world journey, but this is the first time we have hit the ancient Egypt and the ancient civilizations. So this is really great. This week we focused on pyramids, specifically the pyramids and the geography of the area, and we touched a little bit on mummies. I know in the weekly description we talk a lot about mummies, but we're going to push that a little bit to next week because we had a little bit extra books this week. So we focus mainly on the pyramids and geography. Should we get into it?
Yes, let's start.
But before, we promised, because we keep our promises.
We try. We do try.
We're talking a little bit about the nature journals. So these are the two books. First one's a Nature Connection, and there's a lot of bookmarks and a ruler and everything. This is a great little book. We're not going to talk about it today, but we just wanted to show it. Yep. This is what we've been using. It's in conjunction with...
This is the student workbook.
The student workbook, and this is the One Small Square. And what's really cool about this is that it essentially takes you through the entire layer, an ecosystem of essentially a one small square. And you're meant to pick a small square in your backyard. And we chose one right out, actually right there. Down one floor, and right by our pavilion, and we put a rock, and I haven't mowed and everything, so it's this really tall green grass area here in the heat of the summer. Right.
But then there's dirt under the rocks.
There's dirt underneath the rocks, and it's really cool. And there's a lot of activities that they have in here talking about going to find bugs and going to dig in the dirt. And I didn't know what to expect with this at the beginning, and it has turned into a really fun project for not just my oldest, who's kind of lukewarm about playing in the dirt. I tell you what, my 4-year-old loves it. She's constantly poking and looking into the rock, and there's a little bit of a worm activity, which I think we're gonna get some pet worms next week. I gotta go find some. We're in the real heat of the summer here. I'll see if I could find some pet worms.
Might need to do some digging.
Yeah, I might have to go to the bait and tackle shop or something. But this has been a really fun book. Each little segment is just talking about the different layers, the predators and the prey, and how the grass and how the ecosystem works. It's not just like the square, but it's also volumetrically the square. So it's like going down about a foot and just understanding all the various layers that are occurring in this small segment of your backyard. It has been a lot of fun just to be able to connect what we're reading here with our small square. And a lot of times they'll talk about something in here and it won't be in our square, and they'll be like, well, why is it not in our square? I'm like, well, maybe it's not the right time of year and all that type of stuff. So it's been really great, and when paired with the Nature Connection, I think it has really been a very fun, focused, outdoor nature science thing. We're not really, we try to be better about being in nature and doing nature things, but it's hard. And this has been really nice because it's very focused, and we can just keep putting things in. If we find a bug, we put it in our area. Maybe he'll scurry away. But we're trying to plant and seed our little square with bugs and whatnot. So it's been a lot of fun. We have enjoyed it. So One Small Square, we want to talk a little bit about it. And it's something that comes back, at least so far, every single week for the first 7. And I looked forward to next week. It's still on there, and I think the week after as well. So at least through the first 9, 10 weeks, you're going to be covering this book and having a little bit of a ecosystem building in your backyard.
And if you do really enjoy this book, there are other One Small Square books. I know we have a book on tundra.
On the tundra.
There's other different kind of
geography. But this one's for just your backyard.
Yes, this is a good place to start. But if you like this, it is a whole series.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about. We haven't finished it, but we just wanted to point out basically the Egyptian diary, and I always want to get it right. The Journal of Nakat. Anyway,
we're probably not saying that right.
Here's my pro tip. As a guy who cannot pronounce Egyptian names, it's Nakat. We just call him Nikki, and so it's just easier.
Sure how authentic.
His sister is Taimat, and we call her Tammy. And it just makes it easier.
So this is the Journal of a Young Scribe. This is the main literature selection for Build Your Library.
It's been very good. I think in
little line drawings throughout.
First week we read half of the book, so it's actually a very quick read. I mean, last few books that we've been reading have been more heavy reading. This is very light reading, and we'll cover the rest of it at the end. The drawings are great. The story's really fun. But the writing's very brisk, and sometimes you have to remind your learner, hey, a few days have gone by, because it's it's not super clear, like the timeline, because they use different titles. It's like 3 days later, or the eighth day of the second month of the flood. And you're like, wow, what is that? Like,
yeah, 'cause their whole calendar was
around the flood and the harvest, and it was very interesting. And the summer of heat as well. So they had essentially basically like 3 seasons.
So is this kind of like a historical fiction?
Exactly. It's set right in that time. I think First Kingdom.
1465 BC.
Oh, no,
BCE.
that would be New Kingdom. So if I'm getting my timeline correct, so that'd be New Kingdom. So it's hard because a lot of these books, and we'll talk a little bit about it, there were 3 distinct times of the Egyptians in this civilization we're talking about: the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New, and then there were these intermediate periods before. And a lot of the books and the pyramids and the things that we all know, okay, that's all Old Kingdom, and this book's set in New Kingdom, and so they hop around this time period, and you go, oh, no big deal. And it's like, well, that's 1,000 years. Yeah. That's another 1,000 years. Yeah. And that's another 1,000 years, and it's just like the time scales are so vast. It's really impressive to talk about. But this one is, I think, New Kingdom, and it's been really good. We've been enjoying it. But maybe we'll give you a full review on the story and everything at the end. But it's very good.
So far, so good.
So Magic Tree House. So we've embarked on an effort here to possibly encourage independent reading, because our young learner, she's almost 8, and she's doing really well in her reading. We're towards the end of the All About Reading level 2, and we've all been told that's when the readers
really takes off.
And we've been seeing that, and then we can confirm that statement is true. So if you're just starting and someone says it, it's probably true.
So if you hate reading Magic Tree House, like I hate reading Magic Tree House, part of the reason is because it's like such Jack said, blah blah Annie said, blah Jack said, blah Annie said, and you just get like And the reason is it's not meant to be a read aloud. It's meant to be an early chapter book that your child reads to themselves. So I think it's the 3rd book maybe is Mummies in the Morning, and we do have the regular book, and I remember reading it to our daughter when she was like 5, and it was so repetitive, and I thought, oh, I can't wait for you to be able to read this yourself. So they've come out with graphic novel versions.
We're seeing this with a lot of books. I mean, this has been a wave of books for the last 5 or 6 years, like these popular books. The Wings of Fire is a good example of that, where they're coming out with graphic novel versions of books, because I think they're realizing that there's a segment of young readers that want to look at pictures, but they're also willing to read.
Right. So this is great because it's the same story, but you don't have to get the Jack said, Annie said, Jack said, Annie said over and over and over again, right? Because all of it is done in comics. So our daughter has really been enjoying that. She's in the middle of reading this right now. So if you can find, I think it's only the first handful of books are in graphic novel, but if you can find this from your library, I really recommend it because it beats the heck out of having to read the Magic Tree House book. The other option that you have is to get it on audiobook. But again, it's really just not meant to be a read aloud. It's a read to yourself type thing. So if your learner's not there to read to themselves yet, try this as a great option. It's got less words, some really great pictures, and our daughter is loving it so far.
Yep, so. Absolutely. And then there's a companion with it, essentially. It's the fact tracker.
Right. So some of the Magic Tree House books have these nonfiction versions. This is Mummies and Pyramids, and it's got a whole bunch of real nonfiction stuff, and it keeps kind of connecting it back to the story. Like, oh yeah, remember when they were here? This is what the real history is behind it. So if you've got a kid who's super into Magic Tree House, this is a great nonfiction book to use to enhance that. It's really easy reading. It's not as much a bummer to read as the actual Magic Tree House book. So I think that these are great. If you can pick it up from your library, it's a really great way to supplement. You can also kind of hop around in these books. So if your learner had a specific thing in the Magic Tree House that they were kind of curious about, you could even read this as you're reading the book or as they're reading the book and look at specific elements that they're interested in. This is really good. So if you like Magic Tree House or your learner does, definitely put the two together.
Absolutely.
The fact tracker, Mummies and Pyramids.
And we'll talk a little bit at the end of the books, talking about the hopping around, and I'll give you a little bit of pro tips as somebody who's now halfway through the 8th week, which is next week. I've got some things to say about that. Mummies and Pyramids, Usborne. I found that my older one enjoyed, just perusing this, but my little one really loved this one. And this is basically a look inside book from Usborne. And they're basically nice pop-up books.
Lift the flap.
It lifts the flaps.
Double flaps.
Double flaps.
So these are really fun. We've got a couple of these, and this is a bit more on the juvenile side. So if you've got a really young one, our daughter is just entering 2nd grade, and she's kind of an older 2nd grader. So this is a little bit early for little bit too simple for her. She wanted more. But if you've got a true first grader doing this, this is a great book. If you can find it, pick it up used like we did. It's great. The whole thing is just on mummies and pyramids, and the lift the flaps are done so beautifully. I think it's a really great book.
And somebody who's read a lot of books about this very topic, it does a really good job. It actually does a really good job at telling you all the little individual facts, and I think the drawings are really fun. It's kind of got that Where's Waldo feel to it.
It does.
And it's really fun. The art is, whoever did the art is like, a wink and a nod to Where's Waldo. So it's really good because sometimes there'll be little characters doing funny things. And if you remember that from the Where's Waldo, there's always somebody like tripping and falling and silly.
It's just a fun book of discovery. You know, your kids can lift the flaps and you can read it. And we find that our kids love to, like, we have a bunch of lift the flap books. They just love to sit and look at these. So this is really highly recommended.
Great thing to do while you're reading to them if you have a reader who likes to be read to and they like to do something while they're doing it. Those are the types of things that are great. Eyewitness book, which we pulled off right behind us.
Yes.
From our grand stash.
We love eyewitness books. You know, we always talk about them. This book is no exception.
It came with a big pull-out thing.
It has a big pyramids.
And you can tell your kids, you can teach your kids about what compact discs were. You know, just like our parents used to teach about 8-track and everything.
So this one's kind of fun. It does talk about different types of pyramids, not just Egyptian pyramids. So when we get into Mesoamerica, you would be able to get back and refer back to this. We talk about Mayans.
This is just pyramids in general.
Right.
And the fact that
a lot of it is Egypt.
Yeah, the pyramids erupted all over the world because of ancient aliens, but we're not going to... I'm trying to keep the ancient aliens out of these few weeks with the daughter, but she keeps looking at me and she goes, "Daddy, is this alien thing?" I'm like, "No, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it when we come back again."
You're so weird. So this is a great book. As always, we love to pair really great illustrated books with really great books that have real pictures of artifacts and statues and real things, because this is your kind of museum in a book. So highly recommend Eyewitness Pyramid.
And you can easily probably get one of these from your library. They're very...
The library always has it.
Readily
or
apparent.
Start your own collection as we have.
Yeah, and you can get these used online on, through Bookfinder or whatever, or pretty cheap. So if you need to pick up one of these, really worth the pickup.
They've now started doing them paperback, which makes them way cheper if you can't find it used.
Especially if you have a little bit of an older learner that's coming along with you, maybe a 3rd or 4th or 5th grader who can actually read this. This is a wonderful thing to hand to them, and so that they can be part of the learning as well.
Yeah, these are great. Ooh, let me get the poster.
Oh yes, we can
put the poster back. Yeah, forget.
In the vein, if you've been watching our videos, you know that you wouldn't want to be YouTube podcasters talking about homeschooling. You wouldn't want to be a pyramid builder. Again, just like all the other You Wouldn't Want to Be books, we highly recommend these. These are a lot of fun, comical, entertaining, but delivering really good information in a fun and humorous way. I have always enjoyed these. Right in line with it, this is about building the pyramid. So if your learner is really interested in maybe kind of like getting the experience of what was life like on the ground, because you do talk a lot about pharaohs and famous people and big grand things, but those things were built by regular people. It's really cool to kind of get or were they? I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. My hair isn't long enough for that guy.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
That's bait for me.
Late, you guys.
That's bait for me. She's just throwing me red meat. I mean, I tell you what. But it's really nice to see like the person on the ground and who the real people were, and that's what I really like about these books. That's what has excelled, I think, for me with the topic and the content in these books has really been great. Yep. Next one, I really like this one. The I Wonder Why the Pyramids Were Built.
This is an older one that we picked up at Thrift years ago, but actually it turned out to be really good.
Well, it was kind of funny because it's the title is an illusion, because they don't actually tell you how the pyramids were built until halfway through the book. So they had to set it all up, and it was actually kind of funny because I was reading it to my daughter. She goes, "Daddy, this is about pyramids. We are not yet talking about pyramids." I'm like, "I know, it's a slow burn, they kind of bring it up." But this was actually really good. I love the writing. The artwork was really fun. Very simple. You can read this in a single sitting. You can't complain. I really liked it. It was a great,
and this
great
one
little book.
Focuses on questions, right?
Yeah.
Like who made
the
wigs?
Yeah.
Who had makeup? Why? It's all based around questions.
And the funny thing is that name Nakat, Nikki, kept coming back in a lot of books. Like is
it like Egyptian for Joe?
It must be the Joe. It must be Joe of Egypt. of ancient Egypt. So anyway, this is really good. I love this one, the I Wonder Why.
Yeah.
I remember reading it. We were this weekend. I was reading halfway through it. I was like, "Oh, this is really good. I really enjoyed it." So I'm sure there's probably a whole series of I Wonder Why. But I would encourage you guys to get this if you need an extra book.
Yeah,
absolutely. So talk a little bit about activities.
Well, we have one more book.
Oh my goodness, there was a book beneath
There's
an activity.
another book.
Whoa, what is this doorstop? The Rise and Fall of Ancient Egypt.
So
we know you parents are interested in learning.
I picked this up because for a little bit of light reading, as Hermione would say. Because I wanted to, I've always been kind of fascinated by Egypt too, and I wanted to see what kind of, you got to display it. I wanted to see
Rosetta Stone picture. Yes.
Is that the Rosetta Stone?
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh yeah. Anyways,
about that this week.
I wanted to see what kind of books exist for adults that might be interested in learning more about Egypt. So I've checked out a few different books, and I'll be talking about one every week.
I think we're going to try and do this. Like as we're going through, we're going to try and read some extra books.
I want to know, and you're usually home reading most of the books with the kids.
The kids are learning. You at home watching this video need to be learning. Get off the toilet.
Well,
come on.
No. So the thing is that you get to read most of the Egypt books to the kids because you're one home during the day. So I don't get to do as much of that.
I wouldn't consider myself an expert, but I am an expert.
So anyway, I wanted to read something that I could read before bed so I could be more educated. Yeah. I've never been a big nonfiction person. I have to say, this book is super fascinating. So I haven't made it through the whole thing because it is a little bit large. Yeah. But
almost 500 pages.
I really enjoyed it, and I found it very interesting. So if you're interested in ancient Egypt, you might even see if you can get this on audiobook if you want to listen to it. Yeah. But I thought it was really great, and I just wanted to tell everyone about it in case it's something that you as a parent want to do.
Absolutely,
some of your own.
I think
work.
I think it's a great idea, and I'm hoping
you got to add this to your reading list. I mean,
she knows my reading list. She knows I ain't got time for that.
He loves to read historical books, but you should. This was really good.
I'll put it on the list.
You got to put it on the list, babe. I was
put
really
on the list
good
for a few years from now. We did some activities. One of the things when you first get into Egypt, you got to start thinking about the design of it. It's such a unique thing, and we were talking about this last night. That they said it was this remarkable area of the world where it was. Now they warred and they had wars and stuff, but it was relatively peaceful because of the geography. Massive desert on the east, massive desert to the west, and they're all living on this little narrow strip. And so getting the geography in your head, I think, was a really cool thing. And so we took a brown paper bag you can get at the grocery store, and we went ahead and just actually made the river in Egypt. And what's cool about this,
the Nile.
Yeah. And so as we see those, Esna around here on Thebes, right at the Crook, that's where our story started. And this is where he was from, and we found the city, and we put it on our map. And I kind of drew the river, and I drew the delta, and then she painted over it. And then we're putting, there's the city of Memphis. We're putting some landmarks with the pyramids, and we're going to keep populating more and more elements of this. Also getting the terminology right. So we all think up and down, but it's actually reversed here because this is the watershed is to the south and the delta is to the north, so it flows north. So Upper Egypt is the southern side, and Lower Egypt is the northern side. So it's kind of a weird thing you have to get your mind around because the river does flow north, so downstream is up, and it's kind of odd to think about, especially for us when we're in the United States and the grand river in our country is the Mississippi, and that flows north to south, and so we kind of have to wrap our head around it. But anyway, this is going to be a nice little ongoing project of ours as we're just going to populate. I'm just going to have literally these little things. I made cut out little pyramids and tape them on. Just super simple project, but you can see it's a nice little thing. And what's cool about it is that it kind of has a built-in fold. So we can't complain. Then we did almost the exact same thing, but in food form. Ariel, tell them what we made.
I'm going to just sneeze. Excuse me.
We make Rice Krispie treats.
We did. Well, I saw this thing on the Build Your Library Level 1 Facebook group.
It was a sheet of Rice Krispie treats.
We made a really great Rice Krispie treat recipe, which I'll include because I've never made them before, and darn, were they delicious.
They were delicious.
Anyways, so we made Rice Krispie treats. I took a sheet tray from the oven, and I lined it with tinfoil. I sprayed it with a little bit of spray release so it wouldn't be terrible. And then we patted it down. I made a groove for the Nile. And we got that all set. And then we got Toblerones for the pyramids. We cut them up. They're triangles. And we put them where we got a map up. We asked the Google Home to give us a map. and it didn't give us a very good map. So we had to go to one of the books. Actually, I think we went to the Wonder Why book. Anyway, we got a good map of Egypt, and our daughter put all the major pyramids there. Then I went ahead and took white chocolate. I melted white chocolate and I mixed in a little bit of blue food coloring, and then I poured it in the valley that I had, the trench that I'd made for the Nile. So I poured that all along there, and then we let that dry. And then we ate it.
Did we have friends over?
We had friends over.
Yeah.
And so it was funny because we barbecued, and then at the end,
and they're homeschoolers, and they're doing ancient civilizations.
Right, they're in Greece.
They're in Greece a little bit.
It was funny because we were like, "Does anyone want to eat Egypt?" And they were like, "What?"
What?
And then we started, and their kids were like, "Egypt is delicious." So it was fun. We got one picture of it, which maybe I'll put on the Facebook group, but otherwise, it was eaten very quickly. So if you're going to make a map of Egypt...
Well, it was very thin, so we didn't eat a lot of it, but we ate a lot of it. Yeah.
So if you're going to make a map of Egypt, highly recommend you go for the Rice Krispie Treat Toblerone version. You can also do the Nile in like cookie icing or something. And then I saw somebody did like green cookie icing around it, but I didn't have any, and so we just melted white chocolate. It was delicious. So
it worked wonderfully.
No problem there. But it was really fun because our daughter had to actually mold the Rice Krispie into the shape of Egypt, include the Red Sea and all of that. So that was really, really great. So we highly recommend that activity.
Absolutely. So you also watched a movie on Hulu.
Yeah, I think it was on Hulu.
It was on Hulu called Mummies. I bailed out. I was doing other things.
Right. It was an animated movie. Came out this last year. Incredibly silly. And totally fanciful. It's about a land where mummies live forever, and it's underground, and they live forever. And then it's
called the afterlife. I've read enough of it.
Anyway,
yes.
And then they end up getting loose in London, and yada yada yada. Not Sean Bean's finest moment. The kids absolutely. It was such a silly movie. Kids absolutely loved this movie.
Of course.
So
of course.
If you have littles, I mean, our older daughter would have been able to watch maybe more documentaries. There's a bunch of great ones on Disney Plus. But our 4-year-old, is not going to do that. And I was like, we're just going to do something fun. So we watched it for pure fun and almost zero historical value. But I'm telling you about it because it was fun.
Then we also did a little bit of video watching. We watched a couple of videos on just pyramids and general things like on Nat Geo. But we watched a really good one on, I think it's Kings and Generals is the channel, and we'll go ahead and put a link into this. They did a 3D flyover of Thebes, which was the religious center of, essentially, if you...
Go back to
our map. Down here, actually, obviously Cairo and Memphis and everything was up here, but the religious center was actually down here in Thebes, and they did a fly-through of all the structures that are in that area, all the temples and all the religious areas, the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of the Queens, and it was one continuous flyover, and then the buildings were essentially exploded out so you could see inside of them. Really, really cool. It was totally awesome. I was enthralled the whole time. Even my eldest was like, "Wow, this is really cool." She really liked it because it just felt like you were just constantly flying from one area to the other, and they did it in such a way that it looked real. If you ever do some of these like video game walkthroughs, I think we're going to give that a try. There's some ancient Egypt walkthrough games. We're going to try those out maybe in a week or two. But this was really, really cool. I really enjoyed this. We'll put a link into it. It's well worth 20 minutes of watching. Yeah, I enjoyed it. So it was really cool.
I love how I watch something fluff and you watch something like really of substance.
Well, it's one of those things where I was just looking for a couple of videos, and I was like, I was tired of reading all day. And I was like, I just want to watch a few videos. And I just started doing some searches, and these great videos came up. Now, I promise you a little bit of a thing. So when you read these books and you're reading all the spines and you're reading all these things, you're going to read the same thing over and over. I'm about a week and a half into this. I have another week and a half to go. I want you to be free, and you're going to get the passes here. You can skip reading about how often they pull the brain out of the nose. Did you know every single book talks about it? Every single book. And Natron, did you know they put the mummies in Natron? Oh my gosh. Did you know they pulled
Natron?
It's like a salt. I need to pull up a video on where the stuff is mined and
what they salt them. Oh, I read about that in the other book.
Yeah, I know. So they talk about the same stuff. All the Egypt books, they will repeat the same thing. So if there's something in there that you're just so tired of, you get to stop reading about it. So when you get to it, you just skip the page, keep moving on.
But there's enough interesting different things. It's
Exactly.
Not, it's like
It's
you
not
kind of
everywhere.
need all the books because
Yeah.
you're going to get different. But you might even peruse beforehand and be like, oh yeah, we already covered that.
So
Covered that.
we're into next week, and that's talking a little bit more about mummies. And every book has the same explanation. So if you hit it like once or twice, maybe spread it out, you can skip it in other places. Almost every one of the books, one of the nonfiction books that I'm reading right now, which is kind of an extra book, which we'll talk about next week, is going through the process. The Mummy Eyewitness book goes through the process. It's just like you are free to skip it if you want to. So feel free. There's a lot of repeated content in a lot of these books. So try to get the things that are that your learner is excited about. I think my learner is more excited about the gods and goddesses type of thing.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to try and bring a little bit more of that in. And
We have a couple of really good extra books for gods and goddesses.
Yeah, we'll recommend those next week. But this has been really good. This has been a great week. We have enjoyed it. Next week, we are going to be talking primarily around mummies.
And gods and goddesses.
Gods and goddesses, and I think then we're going to focus a little bit more on Tut and hieroglyphics in the third week. So that's kind of how I'm focusing it.
Next week's also Hatshepsut.
Yeah.
Hatshepsut?
Queen Hattie. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week for week 2 of Ancient Egypt. We have had a blast so far. We hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you. Make sure you hit subscribe below.